Trump reverses 80 years of U.S. foreign policies with concessions to Russia and controversial statements. February 23, 2025. After more than a decade of Western opposition to Russia and the Cold War's legacy, Trump's return creates the impression that the U.S. may be switching sides. Following the first U.S.-Russia talks in 3 years, Trump signaled that he is willing to abandon America's allies to make common cause with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The statements Trump made about Ukraine on February 18 would never have come from any other U.S. president of any party, the New York Times wrote, referring to his accusations against Ukraine's leadership for the war and the lack of a deal. Trump is in the middle of executing one of the most jaw-dropping pivots in American foreign policy in generations, a 180-degree turn that will force friends and foes to recalibrate in fundamental ways, the article said. Every U.S. president since World War II has viewed Moscow as a threat, while Trump is doing everything possible to position Russia as an ally for future joint efforts. He has made it clear that the U.S. is done isolating Putin for his unprovoked aggression against a weaker neighbor and the killing of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. The New York Times suggested Trump wants to make the Russian dictator one of America's closest friends. It's a disgraceful reversal of 80 years of American foreign policy. Every American president of the last 80 years would oppose President Trump's statement, said Corey Schaefer, former national security advisor to President George W. Bush. The New York Times described the negotiations in Riyadh as a meeting between two major powers dividing their spheres of influence, comparing them to the Congress of Vienna or the Yalta Conference. According to the article, the concessions Trump and his team are likely willing to make sound like a Kremlin wish list. Russia keeps all Ukrainian territory it has seized. The U.S. will not provide Ukraine with security guarantees or NATO membership. Sanctions on Moscow will be lifted, and Russia will be reinstated out in the G7. In exchange, Putin would not have to give up anything except stopping the killing of Ukrainians while claiming victory. Trump's statements on February 18 reflected his perspective on the situation. They also sent shockwaves through Europe, which is beginning to grasp the loss of its key Cold War ally. Some of the most shameful comments uttered by a president in my lifetime. Trump is siding with the aggressor, blaming the victim. In the Kremlin they must be jumping for joy, said Ian Bond, deputy director of the Center for European Reform in London. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reiterated that Ukraine would never accept Moscow's ultimatums or recognize any agreements reached without its participation. After the talks, Trump made several statements closely aligned with Russian propaganda. He dismissed Ukraine's outrage over its exclusion from the negotiations in Riyadh and blamed Kiev for Russia's invasion. Trump further accused Ukraine of squandering $350 billion in U.S. aid and said Russia could quickly destroy Ukrainian cities, including Kiev, but was saving its missiles. By the New Voice of Ukraine, story by Alex Stezhensky, February 21, 2025.